I tried my best to lay it all out. I could not believe those Mitchell interviews that I was hearing this morning, and I went back, Andrew, and I cross-referenced them against everything I'd read from the Premier and the PM, both over the last couple of days. We've got confirmation that Australia's chief scientist was sent to Victoria to help them get their house in order, that the bloke in charge of health down here in Victoria, Brett Sutton, didn't even meet with the chief scientist and admitted today he hadn't even read the report. That Finkel said they've really got to have this integrated IT system run like they do in New South Wales. Greg Hunt says that the Morrison government offered them that system back in March. It wasn't taken up. Sutton confirms today, for goodness sake, that they're still running around with faxes and paper. And now the Premier, gee whiz, it's a mess. I better send some people up to New South Wales quick smart to find out what they're doing. I mean, you honestly couldn't make this stuff up.
Well, if I was in Victoria like you are, Peter, I'd be very angry. It's as simple as that. I mean, a couple of months ago at the very start of the thing, we reported that contact tracing wasn't up to scratch and people waiting 5, 6, 7 days in regional Victoria for test results. My wife and son were tested up here a couple of weeks back. They had their test results back by text message within 15 hours. And why is that important? It's important because it means that had one of them had COVID, they could have told everyone, or they could have contacted everyone that they'd been near for the past 72 hours, shut them all down. And that's how you get on top of an outbreak. And that's what Victoria's unable to do because Daniel Andrews now says it's 48 hours, but not sure you can believe that from the stories I heard, that they get tests back. But that's too long. And so even aside from the fact that they haven't got the systems in place to go out there and contact all the contacts, it's how long the tests are taking. And it's the computer system that failing there, and that is a real revelation that Greg Hunt offered to help in March. That is significant. That could mean that you get the text, you get the quick notification, shut yourself down, contact everyone you've been in contact with, come to us, tell us all your contacts. That's how you get on top of this thing. And the worry is, of course, that the lockdown's obviously working. Daniel Andrews keeps warning about it starting up again. Well, there's only one reason it's going to start up again once you get to 20 new cases a day, let alone 5 or 0, what he wants. That's if your contact tracing show isn't in order. Yeah, but
that's such an important point. So he keeps talking about his contact tracing is clearly good because it's clearly working, the numbers are coming down. What's working is the lockdown.
That's right.
It's not the contact tracing system. Now, if he doesn't get his house in order on the contact tracing system, the moment he starts to let people out of their homes, which, you know, can't happen soon enough, and let businesses start to come back to work and start to pick up the pieces, it's going to skyrocket again because this guy's a clown. You know, hotel quarantine, testing taking weeks, families we know that had relatives diagnosed positive, gone through the virus, buried and had their funerals before his contact tracing team even pick up the phone to say, oh, look, we're just, you know, chasing some contacts of your relative. Well, sorry, Dad's dead, buried, gone. It's all over. You know, this is just such a manifest failure of government. I mean, I thought I'd seen it all in the Rudd-Gillard years. Honestly, mate, a front row seat in all of that. This is just diabolical. Like, this is utterly diabolical. And Victorians have got no hope of coming out of this before Christmas time. There's a lot of talk about, you know, whether he will survive, whether he will go around. This is the Premier. Now, he had some words to say in his future, trying to rise above all the criticism from people like me. Let's have a listen.
The responsibility that I have is to see our state through this, and that's exactly what I'm focused on. Let me be, as you said in your question and your acknowledgement, let me be as frank as I can be. Politics has never mattered less to me.
When they say they're above the politics, it's a bit like saying, I support my leader, but we know, you know, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, well, that's right. Interestingly enough, that's a term Scott Morrison's used around the place as well. Of course, politics is always important. It's about keeping your job and your reputation and keeping your party in power. But Dan Andrews will go next year, I think. I saw those comments last night and there was no talk about staying on into eternity. You hear that his caucus is already manoeuvring to try and figure out who should replace him. I think he feels he has to get past this particular outbreak, knowing he was in charge when the mistakes were made that caused it, and then he'll retire gracefully next year. maybe even after the hotel quarantine inquiry reports or before. But I think that Dan Andrews realises that he's got to go.
Yeah, let's not forget that at the start of this crisis, Public Health, who handles pandemics, there were more people in his office as political advisors than there was in the Public Health team in the Victorian Department of Health. He's not just the leader, he hasn't been just the leader of the Labor Party for 10 years in Victoria, he was also the Health Minister. So I think he bears a heavy responsibility for all of this. So do Victorians. A change.org poll, in the last 24 hours, 45,000 people want the governor to step in and sack the government. Tells you people are cranky, Andrew.
Well, he's fronted up whatever it is 80 days in a row, including Saturdays, to those press conferences. I suspect that part of the motivation for that, Peter, is guilt. And it must be a terrible guilt to live with for Dan Andrews, knowing he was in charge, whether he was the one making the mistakes at bureaucratic or ministerial level. Ultimately, the Westminster system means he's in charge of those mistakes, and to see that outbreak happen when it didn't have to, and to see it reach heights it did when it didn't have to. And I think that's why he's showing the determined front he is, and I at least salute him for that, for showing up every day. But ultimately, I think the motivator of that is guilt that his government and his health department weren't up to it.
Yeah, it's very savvy analysis. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Peter.